by a normal bone marrow. That's the important thing. In response to systemic infection or cancer, non-hematologic cancer, and non-bone marrow cancer. And it needs to be distinguished from chronic myelogenous leukemia. Because again, the cells are going to look mature, so you wouldn't be thinking about AML, you'd be thinking about CML. Okay? So leukemoid reaction, where you have whopping elevations of the neutrophil count to greater than 30,000, which you can see in response to systemic infections or to certain malignancies. With the leukemoid reaction, and the differential diagnosis is going to be leukemoid reaction versus CML. Okay. The other topic that we need to mention in passing are the so-called myelodysplastic syndromes. Don't confuse myelodysplasia or myelodysplastic syndrome with myeloproliferative syndrome. Myeloproliferative syndrome are CML, polycythemia vera, essential thrombocytosis, and myelofibrosis. Myelodysplasia or myelodysplastic syndrome refer to progressive bone marrow failure, but these people have black in the peripheral blood, rather in the marrow, but the black cells are they would have an insufficient number of blasts to make the diagnosis of AML. And about half of patients who present with myelodysplastic syndrome go on to develop AML. Okay. Let's talk about the platelets in the coagulation system. Okay. All right. So the coagulation system is going to include the coagulation proteins, the coagulation factors, and the platelets. And we're going to talk about each of these in turn. Just as we saw with the other hematologic problems, you can have either problems with overactivity of the coagulation system or underactivity of the coagulation system. So let's talk first about the underactivity state, the hypocoagulable state, which predispose patients to bleeding tendencies. Let's talk first about patients that have problems with decreased coagulation factors. And this is the coagulation cascade. So here is factor 7. This is the extrinsic pathway. This is the intrinsic pathway. This is PT. This is PGT. You see they both coalesce on factor 10. And the conversion of factor 10 to factor 10A is the critical step. And at this step, where the body regulates, this is one of the steps, let's say, where the body regulates procoagulant and anticoagulant activity to maintain balance between the clotting and prevention of clotting and prevention of bleeding. The clotting factors are synthesized in the liver, and they require vitamin K for their synthesis. And so you can see abnormalities with in the clotting factors in patients who have, for example, liver disease or patients that have vitamin K deficiency. You see this often in patients who are alcoholics, and when they come in and they'll have an abnormal PT. The question is, well, do they have an abnormal PT because they have a bad diet? They don't eat. They eat a lot of green leafy vegetables, so they're vitamin K deficient, or do they have it because they have liver disease? And so what you do is you give vitamin K, and if you correct it, then you know it's vitamin K deficiency. And if it doesn't, then you know it's liver disease. Some of the hereditary diseases that are associated with decreased coagulation factors include hemophilias. They talk about hemophilia A, which is deficiency of factor 8. And they talk about hemophilia B, which is a deficiency of factor 9. And factor 9. Okay, so both of these are going to affect the intrinsic pathway. It's going to affect the PTC. Okay, and hemophilia B, or factor 9 deficiency, is also known as Turkish disease. And actually, the story behind that is picked. It was the first person who ever described it. His name was Stephen Christmas. No, I'm sorry, he wasn't the first person who described it. He was the first patient who was the subject of the person who described it. So Stephen Christmas was the first patient. And the article describing his case was published in the British Medical Journal in the 1950s on Christmas Day. So there's a couple of reasons that it's called Christmas disease. So this is Christmas disease, and then that's hemophilia A. Okay, so they depict the same thing that I'm showing you here in figure 610, and they're showing you the locations of hemophilia B and hemophilia A. Again, the PT assesses the extrinsic pathway, the PTT assesses the intrinsic pathway. PT is affected by warfarin, PTT is affected, for example, by heparin. Okay, so let's turn now to problems with the platelet. Decreased platelet function or decreased platelet number. Okay, and this is a slide that shows you causes of platelet abnormalities. So you can have too many platelets, you can have too few platelets. Okay, aplastic anemia, remember we said there's a misnomer, and that you have problems with all the cell lines. So again, it's illustrating that you have problems with thrombocytopenia there as well. B12 and folic acid deficiency, predisposed to development of thrombocytopenia, radiation and chemotherapy because of the effect on the bone marrow. Decreased survival because of hypersplenism. Remember, in a large spleen, it's going to result in really cooling of all of the cell lines and main destruction of all the cell lines. And then, besides problems with numbers, either too many or too few, you could have problems not with the number of the platelets, but with the quality of the platelets, with the job that's improving. There's something wrong with the platelets, even if the numbers are normal. Okay? And so the first topic that we're going to talk about is patients that have, for example, well, let's talk about what the platelets have to do, and that's depicted in figure 611 on page 131. So when a patient has an injury to the vessel wall, the first thing that has to happen is that the platelets have to stick to the injured endothelium. The second thing that they have to do is they have to secrete signals to summon other platelets to the site of the injury. And then the third thing that has to happen is that the platelets have to be able to stick together. Okay? So that's what the platelets have to be able to do. So problems can happen in any of those areas. Okay? These slides basically telling you the same thing that figure 611 does, just a little bit different. So, for example, patients that have von Willebrand disease are unable to bind the vessel wall. It's the von Willebrand factor, which again is depicted in figure 611, and is depicted here. If they're lacking this substance, the von Willebrand factor, which attaches to the damaged endothelium, then they're not going to be able to bind. It's probably going to be step one. Okay. And they mentioned that besides von Willebrand's disease, another disease that can do it is the so-called Bernard-Soulier disease, where Bernard-Soulier disease, the problem is is not with von Willebrand factor. They have one von Willebrand factor, but they don't have the protein. They don't have the protein that the von Willebrand factor binds to on the platelet. So they're missing that binding protein. Okay. If they are deficient in being able to secrete signals such as thromboxane, serotonin, serotonin, then they're going or if they're defective in numbers, they're not going to be able to summon all the platelets to the site. And then the last thing is that they need to have the protein that allows them to adhere to each other. They don't show it on these slides, but they do show it in your book on page 131. Lacking the GP2D / 3A protein or defective protein, and then they're unable to coagulate. That glances thrombocythemia. Okay, so with let's talk about platelet defective defects in platelet numbers or thrombocytopenia. I showed you the slide that talked about some of the causes of thrombocytopenia. By the way, alcohol by itself can cause thrombocytopenia. Patients that come in with alcohol, they can be thrombocytopenia just from the alcohol. Of course, you have to think about other things as well, like do they have splenomegaly, and that's why they're thrombocytopenia. It's a suppressive effect of the alcohol on the bone marrow. Okay, so in terms of platelet disorders, the patients that have thrombocytopenia, the bleeding is characterized by purpura and bleeding to the mucous membrane. Okay, they tend not to get any problem unless you don't get any problem unless the platelet count is less than 50,000. Okay, and you don't really have severe spontaneous bleeding unless platelet counts go below 20,000. And when they get low enough, then what you really worry about patients who are severely thrombocytopenia is like a spontaneous intracerebral bleeding. That's catastrophic, potentially catastrophic. So that's why we worry about platelet counts when they start getting down around there. Okay. You see that there's a partial list, but there's a whole list of drugs that can cause thrombocytopenia. Again, this is apart from their effect on platelet function. We worry about the effect on platelet function as well, but they can cause thrombocytopenia. Okay. The causes of thrombocytopenia, we talked about some of these before. Decreased production, and then increased destruction. And they list a number of things that can cause destruction there. You see that you can get autoimmune destruction of platelets, that's referred to as IPC, or idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura. You can get a consumptive destruction of platelets related to something like DIC. Okay, PCP and PCP is thrombotic thrombocytopenia purpura and hemolytic uremic syndrome. We're going to talk about each of those. And then you can have drugs that cause thrombocytopenia purpura. That causes thrombocytopenia. And I want to take a second to talk about heparin-induced thrombocytopenia because it's an important topic. Okay, so this is the pathogenesis of heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. So you have IgG. This is the antibody against the heparin complex. antibody against the platelet is bound, the heparin is bound to the surface of the platelet, and then the antibodies are going to cause sensitive aggregation. Okay, and so that's going to result in thrombocytopenia. Okay, now the thing is that heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, although it does cause thrombocytopenia, but the thing that you worry about with heparin-induced thrombocytopenia is clotting. And this shows you why you're getting the clotting, because you're getting aggregation of platelets. The antibodies binding to the heparin platelet complex, causing the platelets to aggregate as they do in figure 3, on panel 3 on page figure 611. So paradoxically, patients who develop heparin-induced thrombocytopenia are prone to the development of clotting. Okay, so if you have somebody that is on heparin and they start to develop thrombocytopenia, you need to worry about, is this person developing heparin-induced thrombocytopenia? Is to stop the heparin, and the thing again that you worry about is the development of paradoxical clotting. Yep.
How would you combat that? Would you give it an aspirin or Pegol?
Well, if you recognize it early enough and you stop it, they don't develop any clotting complications. I think it's probably been a while since I had a manager, but I think you can just stop the heparin and get away with it. And if they develop clotting, then obviously you need to keep it directly. The whole thing about distinguishing heparin-induced thrombocytopenia from thrombocytopenia in a patient that's on heparin but not heparin-induced is an interesting topic, but beyond the scope of our talk today. Let's see. The next thing that they talk about is thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura and the hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is sort of on the same continuum. And thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura is recognized by a classic pentax, a classic constellation of 5 things. Patients with thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura develop thrombocytopenia, fever, renal dysfunction, neurological deficits, and a microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. So, thrombocytopenia, fever, renal dysfunction, neurological deficits, and a microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. And by the microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, I'm referring to what we talked about the other day. Remember, so you get coagulation, deposition of coagulation proteins in the microvasculature, and then the red cells, when they're passing through that, they get damaged by shearing and stuff. They get torn up. That's a microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. So you would see an increase in the uncomplicated bilirubin, right? You see an increase in the LDH, decrease in the haptoglobin, all of those things that you see with the hemolytic anemia. Do you have a question? Why does it cause clotting? Because it depends on the individual's immune response to the drug. In the absence of the immune response to that, you wouldn't get it. Is that clear? It's a idiosyncratic reaction on the part of the individual. Okay. Like a hypersensitivity reaction. That's why you don't get it all the time. Why do people get TTP? They give you a list on page 131. They can have an autoimmune process that sets off the TTP. Pregnancy can set off the TTP. Infection with certain organisms can set off the TTP. Certain cancer treatments can set off TTP. And certain drugs can produce TTP. So important again to think about that, to recognize the pentat, be able to recognize the pentat, and think, oh, maybe this is TTP. Okay? So you will have it on your differential diagnosis for thrombocytopenia, renal dysfunction under the right circumstances, neurological deficits. Okay? The book points out that the book says hemolytic uremic syndrome and TTP are thought to have the same underlying pathophysiology, but this book is from 2007, and that's not thought to be true anymore. Hemolytic uremic syndrome is recognized by a classic triad instead of pentat, and the classic triad is a microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, thrombocytopenia, and acute renal failure. So, missing the fever and the neurologic deficits, okay, compared to TTP. And you can see hemolytic uremic syndrome after a diarrheal illness. 90% of the time, hemolytic uremic syndrome follows a diarrheal illness, and it's especially common in children. So 90% of the time, it will follow a diarrheal illness. And they give you the example, E. coli, particularly E. coli 0157:H7. And 10% of the time, it follows an upper respiratory infection. So you can see hemolytic uremic syndrome in the aftermath of a diarrheal illness or respiratory infection. And the book points out, interestingly, importantly, that unlike DIC, the PT and TTP are normal for these conditions. I'm going to show you a slide that illustrates that, shows that side by side. I don't show you that, but I can show you DIC. Okay? The patients that have DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, which does this. Okay? They get off thrombocytopenia because again, they're diffusely activating the coagulation cascade, so they're consuming platelets and coagulation proteins. The PTP is going to be along, but the PT is going to be along. Okay? So you wouldn't see this. You would not see that in these other conditions. Okay, DIC is discussed at the top of page 132, and again, they're telling you that it results from activation of the coagulation system from any number of causes, including certain infections, trauma, complications of childbirth. They can set off the coagulation cascade, and these people are prone to the developing of diffuse coagulation, so they get clotting, diffuse clotting, but as they're consuming platelets and coagulation factors, then they're also prone to the development of bleeding. So it's a bleeding and clotting mess. Again, in DIC, the PT and PCT are elevated because you're getting rid of the coagulation factors as you're consuming them. You don't see that in PCT, H2S. And the other marker of DIC is the generation of fibrin split products as fibrin is being consumed. Again, as the red cells pass through these areas, microangiopathic hemolytic anemia develops. So you get hemolytic anemia and the appearance of schistocytes. Remember those abnormally shaped red cells. And then if somebody has DIC obviously real bad news. Besides treating whatever the underlying cause is, whether it's an infection or whether it's cancer or whether it's complications of childbirth, besides treating the underlying cause, you also have to manage the bleeding and clotting complications. And that's not something you're going to want to help with the hematology. Okay. Okay. So let's see now. Let me go back to the. So that. Let's see. So that's all I just want to say about the hypocoagulant space. Let's talk about the hypercoagulant space. Okay. Okay, so if we go back to remember we said that this keeps the extrinsic pathway, is the intrinsic pathway, TC, PCC, factor 10 is a critical step where procoagulant and anticoagulant influences have to be balanced. And then activated factor 10 converts prothrombin to thrombin, thrombin converts fibrinogen to fibrin, okay, which is responsible for cross-linking, okay. So let's talk about the procoagulant and anticoagulant effects. So protein C is going to be one of the proteins that we're going to talk about in a second. And you'll see that thrombin tends to promote the conversion of the activation of protein C, and then activated protein C is going to inactivate in the presence of factor S, is going to inactivate factor 5, inactivate factor 5, active 5A and 8, and inactivate those factors. Right? So that's the protein C is going to have that effect on coagulation, interfering with those inactivating these factors. So, let's talk about this hypercoagulable space. And the coagulation clotting is predisposed to by Mercal's triad. So these are the things that tend to promote clotting. Okay, so they use pathological clotting, decreased blood flow, and stasis. An injury to the blood vessel or inflammation that affects the blood vessel, and then changes in the intrinsic properties of the blood. These are the three risk factors for the development of a clot. Okay, so this is, for example, why it's a bad idea to take a long car trip without getting up and stretching your leg. There's a state vessel injury could be trauma to the leg, or whatever, surgery, an inflammatory state, and predisposed to the clot. And then, if you have problems in the intrinsic properties of the blood, which means there's something about your coagulation protein, the coagulation system, that predisposes you to the development of the clot. So this is what we're looking for when we're looking for an inherited hypercoagulated state. We're looking for a change in the intrinsic properties of the blood. Okay? They point out that most of the primary hypercoagulated states are autosomal dominant genetic defects. So we talked about protein C, how it inhibits factor A, factor 5 rather, and that protein S is a cofactor, right? And then anti-clotting 3 is going to inhibit these other factors. So one inherited hypercoagulable state is activated protein C resistance, and this is the most common inherited hypercoagulable state. This can be found in up to 25% of patients who present with a deep venous thrombosis and don't have an inciting cause to explain it. Most cases are due to a single DNA base pair substitution, the disease of factor 5. So the problem again is in factor 5, the protein factor 5, which is going to be resistant to protein 6. Okay? And the oldest factor is referred to as factor 5 light because it was discovered in that city. Okay? So again, this is protein C resistance is due to factor 5 Leiden, but the defect is in the factor 5 protein. It's resistant to protein C. Another cause, another inherited cause of hypercoagulability is protein C deficiency. So again, this is the major inhibitor of factor 5, and apparently the incidence of this is 1 to 2 months. You can have protein S deficiency. Remember, protein C in the presence of protein S is going to inactivate factor 5. So if you're protein S deficient, you can also have a hypercoagulated state. Okay? And then finally, anti-thrombin 3, which we said again is going to inactivate and inhibit those other factors 2, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it binds to the factors. And actually, this explains the mechanism of action of heparin. So if you have a deficiency of this, then you're also going to be hypercoagulated. So these are some of the things that we're going to look for in patients that come in with like, let's say they don't come in with a story that they just, drove down from North Carolina or New York. They have no risk factors. They have no basis. They have no recent trauma, no recent surgery. And now you're thinking, okay, well maybe they have an intrinsic problem in their blood. And so you're going to look for factor 5 light. You're going to look for anti-thrombin activity. You're going to look for protein C deficiency. You're going to look for protein S deficiency. Let's see, there's something else I want to tell you. Some other things that the book doesn't mention and that aren't mentioned here. Apparently, there's such a thing as protein Z deficiency. Protein Z inactivates functional factor 10A. This is, don't worry about the stuff I'm telling you now. Okay, just know that there's more than the stuff that's in the book. Okay. Patients can have something called prothrombin 2210 gene mutation, where they have increased prothrombin levels, and that predisposes to hypercoagulability. And then they can have hyperhomocystinemia, elevated homocysteine levels, which could be due to folate or B12 or B6 deficiency, and that also can predispose them. The thing I want you to remember is the protein C, the protein S, the anti-thrombin 3, and the factor 5 ligand, okay? Again, these are acquired hypercoagulable states, trauma, which is going to produce problems, inflammation, and also problems with the blood vessel wall, pregnancy, use of oral contraceptive pills, and especially in the presence of cigarette smoking, okay, immobility. Patients who have hypercoagulability, they can present with a deep venous thrombosis, so they can have pain in the affected lower extremity, they can have erythema, they can have swelling. You always look for the homicide that is just sort of due to your treatment of your cause the PC pulmonary thromboembolism. They can present with this instead of with this. There's complain of chest pain, maybe hemostasis, dyspnea. And again, these are some of the common patterns on hemostatic tests that you can do on people. So, for example, a patient that has idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura, by definition of the term, they're going to be thrombocytopenic, so the platelet count is going to be decreased, the bleeding time is going to be elevated, but the PT and the PCT are going to be normal. Okay? So if the problem is just in the platelet numbers here, decreased platelet count, bleeding time is prolonged, PT and PCT are normal. Okay? Hemophilia A and B, remember we said, normal platelet count, normal bleeding time, they have prolongation of the PCT because it affects the intrinsic pathway. Von Willebrand's disease is interesting. Von Willebrand's disease, normally if you see somebody, right, pre-op, right, and you get a CBC and a PT-PCT, and everything's normal, well, you would think, well, that person shouldn't have any problem with surgery. Okay? But with von Willebrand's disease, they can have a normal platelet count. They can have a normal PCT and they can have a normal PC and still have a bleeding problem with surgery. Okay? And the way you would recognize this, once you had something that happens to, then you would confirm it to be specific tests, but know that you could, what they would have is a prolonged bleeding time. If you did a bleeding time, you would pick that up as well. And then DIC, again, platelet count is decreased because of the destruction of the platelets, the consumption of platelets by the coagulation. The bleeding time is going to be prolonged because of the effect of the coagulation.
Is the bleeding time a normal test in a coagulation panel?
What?
Is a bleeding time a typical test in the coag panel?
No, you have to ask for it. What you do is they make a really superficial cut of the skin and the bone, and they watch how long it takes to fly to take that off. So you have to specifically ask for it. And I think most of the time you wouldn't do that unless you elicited some history that the person had maybe some problems with bleeding. Okay? Or there may be some other reason why you want to do a bleeding time, but you wouldn't normally routinely do it. The point to understand here, though, is that if somebody had the problem with bleeding and they had a normal PT, they had normal platelet count, PT, you still haven't ruled out one rule. Okay. Any questions about anything that we talked about? All right, we'll come back in 5 or 10 minutes.